With Dragonblight reaching for the conclusion in its narrative, all eyes are on the future for World of Warcraft, and this means the next expansion, the War Within. As we saw at the latest BlizzCon, this will have us explore the hidden subterranean zones, and at the very heart of all of this, the Earthen. This time, however, they are being introduced not only as allies in the coming fights, but as a playable allied race. As with the introduction of all allied races, we can expect to get a lot of contextual information on them and their place within the world. We actually know a lot about the Earthen in general, as they have been involved in many of the storylines over the years. However, these particular playable Earthen come specifically from the hitherto unexplored west of Pandaria, the Isle of Dawn. So let's take a deep dive about what we already know about these Titanforged and what we can expect from these new allies. Just a brief disclaimer about setting expectations. Over the years we've been given a lot of information about the Earthen, a lot of which has been changed and clarified over that time. While I would expect most of the information here to stay correct, there is a chance that some of the lore may be changed. Before getting angry or shouting retcon into the void, remember that most of our knowledge of this Earthen comes from those who don't fully remember the first days, or at least participate in a campaign of a mission, the one set forth by Prime Designate Odin. The origins of the Earthen are from a period of time that we have to rely on this second-hand information. But here is what we know. After the Titans had waged their proxy war against the old gods via their Titanforged creation, the Keepers, they had need to reshape and mould, or at least order the world. To do this, the Keepers in turn would use an ancient device known as the Forge of Wills, in order to create other forms of Titanforged better suited for this purpose. Among the many new races that were created, there were the Earthen. Although the final form of the Earthen that we know today was not actually its first design. The earlier designs proved far too complex or aberrant. These failures resulted in a prototype species that we have encountered, the Stone Trogs. These ill-tempered stone trogs can be found waging a timeless war against the Earthen in the elemental plane of Deepholm. Presumably placed there or escaped there. We cannot exactly ask them due to the aforementioned aggression. The next reiterated generation of Earthen were the kind-hearted and hardy ones we know today. It is said they were created from the living stone. Okay, I will attempt to give a brief description of the living stone, but honestly, this one item really deserves a video of itself. This is an extremely ambiguous material, and can be likened to all sorts of stuff we have found across our many adventures. The living stone has made numerous appearances in-game. We know that the mineral substance does appear in Northrend. We find some in the Storm Peaks, and also along the southwestern shore of the Borean Tundra, where the Tuskar use it to carve edifices of their ancestors in their once holy site, the Cold Rock Quarry. The living stone also appears to have exceptional ability to channel magic. It was also sought by Malagos and the Blue Brood to create the Surge Needles, and even later co-opted by the Twilight Hammer in order to channel the magic that brought Chromatus to life. It could be a type of azurite, or it could just be an exceptional mineral by itself. That much is still unclear, but it has ties to almost all of the ancient lore. If you want a video on the living stone, leave a comment and I promise I will get to it. There were many Titanforged species created at this time. The Vrykul, the Tolvia, the Mechanomes and the Mogu, just to name a few. The Earthen were specifically tailored to carve out the deep places of the world and in the crafting of mountains. Their first leader and king, Urul Stoneheart, was gifted a hammer known as Valinir. With it, he could create more of his kind, grant them life. The legendary hammer was later shattered in the first war between the Earthen and the Iron Dwarves that we will cover later. As with many of the other Titan forged of this time, they are intrinsically linked to the events of Ulduar and the Keeper Loken. In as succinct a way as possible, the Keeper Loken had fallen sway to the dark influence of the old god Yogg-Saron. While under this influence, he seized control of the prison complex of Ulduar and banished most of the Titan forged from its lands. In the coming years, they would tunnel deep beneath the world, in time forgetting about the troubles of the surface and plumbing the depths for their riches. The world, however, was not ready to ignore the Earthen just yet. The Winterscorn War began to rage, and their subterranean homes were soon the subject of invasion. While their battle tactics and magic were formidable, and they used them to put up a fierce resistance, it could not hold out forever. They were assaulted by the new generation iron golems on the ground, and harried by enslaved proto-drakes in the skies. Along with Tyr and many other Titan forged, they were forced to flee and abandon their homes. While many of the Earthen were spread into smaller pockets across the north of Kalimdor, the main contingent would seek shelter under Tyr, Ionia and Arcades' protection in the halls of Uldaman. After the war, the enduring Earthen lived in relative isolation, keeping to themselves. But many of them had begun to show signs of a terrible disease, one that had broken out in the midst of the war, known today as the Curse of Flesh. It would ravage their tough forms, making them fleshy and susceptible to corruption and disease. It was only found out much later this curse was caused by the old god Yogg-Saron. Many of those who contracted the disease were placed into a death-like slumber, stasis chambers beneath the earth where they would await their eventual cure to be found by the Keepers. Some Earthen, along with many of the Mechanomes, chose to stay awake, maintaining the facilities in which they now resided. Meanwhile, on the surface of the world, a new race was gaining power. The Kaldorei, or Night Elves, were expanding their influence across the continent. They came into conflict with the Earthen numerous times, and on one notable occasion, they were thoroughly defeated by House Ravencrest. A humorous, albeit little-known fact, the term dwarf that we all know today was actually a racial slur, one used by the Kaldorei in reference to the Earthen, often thought of as translating along the lines of Stumpy One. The widespread use of the term most likely came about much later, from the High Elves who would have still had knowledge of them after their re-emergence. Despite the rampant xenophobia of the Night Elves, when the Burning Legion arrived and the events of the War of the Ancients began, they could not turn away any help from any race. This included the Earthen, who by all accounts were convinced to join the fight by none other than Jared's Shadowsong. The subsequent sundering of the world had a profound effect on the Earthen. Being so intrinsically connected to the very ground itself, those who remained in Uldum locked themselves away with their sleeping brethren. It was thanks to one brave Mechanome that they would awaken at all. But awaken they did, having long since succumbed completely to the Curse of Flesh, and having only a vague, lost dream-like memory of their former lives, they would rejoin the world. No longer Earthen, but Dwarves. The other small pockets that did survive the coming years would develop their own cultures, some still adhering totally to their Titan programming. A notable exception to this is the Frost Dwarves. While holding many similarities to the Earthen, they are in fact a subspecies, likely ones who succumbed to the Curse of Flesh in the icy environs and had to adapt. They do in fact bleed, despite appearances, If you're hoping for Frost Dwarves, it's likely we might see it only as a customization option for regular dwarves. Fingers crossed. However, while this is their known history, there is still a lot of questions surrounding their creation and certainly their importance. According to the Titanforge records, the Titans, when seeding other worlds, would use an earthen template, a matrix. However, they would use biomass, meaning flesh, organic beings rather than stone. However, in this instance, they needed increased durability. They did not say what exactly for. It was then that they developed a being comprised of Azeroth itself, as the planet's minerals had surprising inherent resilience. The Living Stone, which we mentioned before. While Azerite was Azeroth's actual blood, and we have seen it infused into earthen around the heart of Azeroth, this living stone could be another natural part of Azeroth itself. The earthen are the race most linked to her, and I would like you to bear this in mind for later. So how does this relate to any of these new earthen on the Isle of Dawn? Well, this is not actually the first time these earthen have been mentioned. There was a lore book added to Uldaman. That is the newest instance of Uldaman added in the Dragonflight expansion, named the Observational Report, Earthen. I won't cover the entire book, just the relevant parts. If you wish to see a more deep dive into that book and the others that were added, I have linked a video in the top right and in the description, and you can click there for that. The first part I want to cover is more using this paragraph to reaffirm everything we just covered. It is apparent from your reports that the degree of transformation in Titanforge subjects is significantly diverse. There is no group in which this variance is more easily observable than the Earthen. While some have succumbed entirely to the malady, such as the Earthen who emerge from Uldaman and call themselves dwarves, others remain resistant, whether in full or in part. At the end here, it is most likely talking about the diversity at which the curse of flesh took hold of them. Perhaps the Ice Dwarves are one such group who succumbed only in part to the ravages of the disease. However, the most important part of the lore book is this next paragraph. One particular notable variant can be found in the Earthen contingent dispatched to investigate the fissures detected in Sector AR938. For further details, search records related to geological anomalies. In the course of their duties, these Earthen began to manifest behaviours analogous to those which would one day be apparent in the self-styled dwarves, despite the two groups being separated by vast swaths of time and distance. In fact, based on their origin dates, I could identify no corollary between these populations. Yet, while their behaviours, language and demeanour show many similarities. For example, assigning Sector AR938 the colloquial name Kaz Algar. Physiologically, the two groups remain distinct. These Earthen mentioned here are actually the Earthen that will be playable allied race in the War Within expansion. Apparently, they have developed a culture not so dissimilar to the dwarves we have come to know, despite having no overt connection. There are, however, some unifying connections between them all. The first is the matrix upon which they were created, the very design the Titans used to create underground workers. However, if this was the case, the likelihood is that the Watcher should at least be aware this is a consequence of their programming, no? The other, however, is that they are all connected by the very material from which they are born. They are born of the crust of Azeroth herself. So then, is this unknown corollary the genetic memory? Or perhaps a shared subconscious connection with the earth as a conduit? Or something older and stranger than that? All good food for thought. Perhaps then, it is some union of the two. They do share a similar nomenclature with the Titan Khaz'goroth, and he is connected profoundly with Earth and deep places. Either way, we can expect our new allies to love caves, treasure, shiny gems, all from within the earth. I also expect a whole lot of beer drinking and cured meats if the dwarves we know are anything to go by. But as always, I would love to hear your thoughts on the subject. Leave me a comment or come tell me directly on the Discord link below. Hope you're all as excited as we are for this new race and the insight it brings. Oh, and don't forget to come back anytime.